Hey everybody, it's your girl Niecy. Yes, this is 10-foot pole when nobody wants to touch the subject except for me. So today we are going to be talking about reparations. Yes, reparations. It's a thing, guys. And apparently, there has been a movement to actually gain reparations for the Black community, and it hasn't been done. And this has been going on since, let me take a look at my notes here. So anyways, the bill is HR 40. And since January of 1989, they've been trying to review how to implement this bill for reparations. And this bill is called HR 40 for those that want to follow along and go ahead and look that up. And if you want to see the timeline on that, you can find that also on Wikipedia. And so, as you know, guys, this has been 30 years, basically 30 years, and they are still trying to figure it out. I mean, you promised my grandma, my great grandma, 40 acres and a mule. Where is it? We didn't get it. I'm not understanding what the issue is here. So here is the solution that I propose. We know that there is a huge amount of trauma that is experienced by the Black community that extends from slavery. Number one, poverty, generational poverty is a thing. And it is really hard for a lot of generations to climb out of the situation that they were placed into by slavery. So the solution would be to allow the distribution of funds to be applied in the following ways. And before I go through the ways, let me say this. What they're proposing would equate to approximately $200,000 per Black person. Okay? So there's per person $200,000. Now, there are going to be different experiences by our Black community. There might be some members of our Black community that has already gotten their education. So some of these things that I actually list out may not apply to them, but I tried to come up with a list that I feel is inclusive for the entirety of our Black community. Okay, so number one, a first-time home buyer program, which would entail at least 10% down that would be received from the government towards a home. That's number one. Number two, and let me back up. So that means the person still needs to qualify for the home, right? You can't do it if you don't have a job, right? You can't do it if you don't have good credit, right? So this may not apply to you because you have to get yourself in a situation where you can actually be able to use this money, or else you end up getting the money from the government, and then if your house goes into foreclosure because you can't afford it, then that money goes back to the government. So obviously, if something like this were to come into play, we want to be wise about how we actually use this money. Number two, now this I think would apply to plenty, and it is debt clearance. So as I mentioned before, the first-time home buyers program, you need to be able to qualify for the program. And one of those ways to qualify to buy a home is your debt has to be under control, your debt to income ratio. So if you have decent credit but a lot of debt, you may want to take, you may want to consider this particular benefit. But if you have a lot of debt and you still don't have a lot of money, it still helps you because it actually minimizes the amount of debt, which contributes to reducing your debt to income ratio. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, education funding. I believe that with this benefit alone, that we would see more Black doctors, we would see more Black scientists, more Black counselors, which also leads to another one of the benefits that I believe as well, that counseling should also be a part of that as a medical benefit, that counseling also should be included. And so if you already went to school and you have student loans, then that could fall under debt clearance, or it would fall under this education fund. So number 4, tax reduction. Let's say for the person that already has a home, their debt is under control as far as what they can pay on a monthly basis in reference to their income. They already went to school, don't have any loans related to education, and they're working. So they may want to actually take advantage of a tax reduction. So that way, with that that amount of money that's reduced off of their income, they could actually use that now towards savings, which would help them that way. Because as you know, most blacks, in comparison to our white counterparts, do not have money in savings. So this would help towards that. And then the next is transportation support. Now I bring this one up because I feel like our welfare system is not necessarily designed as a source to actually get you up on your feet to the point that you no longer need welfare. So if I'm a single mother and I had 5 kids and I'm getting assistance from the government by way of food stamps, maybe some housing benefits, and, I might even get, money towards the house or whatever. I'm always going to need that because it's not addressing the root causes. And if you don't have money for transportation and you just have food, how is that helping you? How is that little bit of money that's helping you when you go to apply for funding from the government for welfare, they tell you if you have a car, then you don't qualify for welfare. How is that fair? So it's like saying when you get up on your feet a little bit, we can't help you anymore. Meanwhile, you still have needs. So this transportation support, I think, would allow, women and or men to be able to apply for some type of assistance, whether it be a bus pass, whether it be a card that they can use towards Uber, whether it be a tax reduction that they can use from purchasing a car, towards the down payment, whatever it might be, something along the lines of assisting with transportation. And along the same lines of what I mentioned before about a single Black mother with 5 kids, you also can't climb out of a situation if you don't have valid transportation, you don't have valid skills. And then the 6th benefit that I would like to mention is daycare. Okay, so if you've paid daycare before, you know that daycare is ridiculous. For my son, and I only have 1 child, I paid upwards to $800 to $900 a month for daycare. That's a lot of money for a single mother to pay with 5 kids. You will never be able to afford that. Even if you have dual income with the 5 kids, that's a lot of money to actually pay. So it almost forces you, just to be able to put your kids in daycare and have someone that can watch them safely, it forces you to have to stay home and again, take assistance from the government. So how do we improve on that to allow people to help themselves? How do we help people help themselves? And then towards program, like I mentioned earlier with education, that doesn't necessarily have to be towards a college education. It could still be towards certificates or any type of skills that someone can actually gain quickly to kind of increase their income. So the other thing to mention about HR 40 is that they want to know like how long, because I guess they don't want to just say for everybody, we'll give you $200,000 and that be done. They want to figure out what's the best way to do that. Time frames and all. So to me, when it comes to a time frame, maybe I don't use $100,000 in a year, or maybe 2 years, maybe even 10 years. I still feel like that amount of money, once you apply for it, it goes towards, just like you have Social Security, basically. Just like you guys know how much money I make because you're taking it to apply it towards Social Security, it would be that a similar bucket. Just like Social Security, and you would apply to use a portion of it, and it reduces that bucket. And it's reflective on your paycheck, so you could actually see the portion that you have remaining. The other thing, as far as like how long I believe the benefit should be, I feel like you should be able to pass the benefit down, again, passing down wealth. So you should be able to pass it down, and I feel like the length of time that slavery was in play up until it was abolished, I think at least that same time frame, the benefit should be available. Let's start there. And then the other thing is, for HR 40, they talked about the apology. So personally, I don't want an apology for slavery. I feel like it would be half-hearted. I feel like if white America wanted to apologize for slavery, they would have did it already, but they haven't. So why would we want an apology as part of passing this bill? Save the apology. What the community needs are the resources.
Can't nobody come between our love, no matter.
So, I feel like we need to prioritize. So let's prioritize homelessness. Let's prioritize drug treatment and counseling due to the generational trauma caused from slavery and its fallout. We have a long way to go in America, and I feel like bringing in reparations is a good start. After all, this is something that's been promised, well over the 30 years. This is just when someone, decided to say, let's go ahead and kick this off because it was promised and still, it wasn't met. 30 years later, it still isn't. I feel like other communities have been able to get ahead, even though there's still racism. And by other communities, I mean our Jewish brothers and sisters, as well as Native Indian. They've been able to come ahead, but blacks, we still haven't. There is still there's still slavery out there. Even though most people don't want to admit it, there's still slavery out there. So it perpetuates the generational trauma that was started years ago. So I want to say this in closing.